Maybe I'm getting old. Yeah, that must be it. Was the game that me? I mean, I have an almost vivid memory of me playing the campaign, and I distinctly remember me enjoying it, but this can't be the same game, can it? So, I launched the campaign for the remastered version, and there is the old familiar Lieutenant Price, or Sergeant, or whatever his rank is, with the old familiar voice and all that ruckus. And yeah, the old familiar parkour at the beginning, where you can determine your difficulty. Of course, a second later, the game just asks you to do which difficulty you want. But hey, at least it serves as a tutorial, right? Right. Okay, so let's move on. Now, I only managed to play through 3 full missions before my little heart broke, and I simply couldn't stand playing on. Like I said, maybe it's just the nostalgia that lets you remember things differently. Maybe I'm getting old, I don't know. Or maybe I was different back then. Or maybe we simply didn't have anything else to play at the time. You know. I know I enjoyed the multiplayer aspect back then of Modern Warfare. It had a similar mode like CS, Search and Destroy, and many of us came from that game, from CS, in need for something new. And I think that was before Counter-Strike Source was out, if I'm correct. And, or actually after, I don't know, I have to check the dates, but anyway, it did a fine job back then. So yeah, I mainly played 5-on-5 Search and Destroy in Clan Wars over at ESL. We had fun for a while, but then yeah, other and better games came along, and so we all moved on one by one. But let's put this aside for now because I really want us to be about the campaign, and I was sure I liked it in my memories. But now I wonder why. Because I played through the campaign again, I start to realize just how flawed it is. The endless waves of enemies that keep respawning unless you advance beyond a certain checkpoint, or the fact that you can probably finish the entire campaign without even firing a shot, because you don't seem to be crucial in it at all. I mean, seriously, give it a try. Just stand behind your fellow mates and let them kill the enemy, and only move forwards to unlock the next checkpoint. I'm positive that you can do it, and I'm very positive that it has actually been done in the original game. So yeah, go ahead and watch your AI teammates. They ignore you. They don't care if you're standing in a spot, and they will run into you and through you and push your way so they can reach whatever scripted destination they were set to be at. It's almost pathetic how poorly that was scripted. It's like the AI doesn't have pathfinding, but a fixed set of paths and waypoints that they will rigorously follow, no matter if there is anything in between. Example you. So much about the immersion, because it makes you feel like a spectator who just happens to be in the way. So the missions are just running behind someone, killing enough enemies to be able to move to the next checkpoint, rinse and repeat. And it's not very deep, nor complex, nor the slightest bit engaging. It is just Call of Duty, you'll say, and you'd be correct. But this is worse, because now it dawns to me that this is the game that started it all. And yeah, of course, there was Call of Duty 1 and 2. I'm not even going to talk about the console version number 3, but this was the first modern Call of Duty. I mean, both in setting and overall gameplay style. And also Call of Duty 1 and 2, they didn't sell very well. They sold enough, but not very well. And they were more considered Quake mods than anything else. And Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the Call of Duty 4, really started this whole Call of Duty hype. And yeah, it really started as the most linear corridor shooter FPS that had ever existed at that point. It's just move forward, kill or don't, and hit those checkpoints, mate. So the game just sends wave after wave of enemies at you without there being any real consequences. Worst case, you die and you just respawn a bit earlier at the last checkpoint, and you just keep on going and going. There is nothing really of any consequence. Also, the enemies they seem void of really any AI or any behavior or anything. Just bots with some kind of auto aim script. Depending on the difficulty you play, the script is more or less loose with the reaction times that has been scripted into it. So if you play the harder difficulty, then the bots, the enemies, will fire at you quicker. They all fire with extreme accuracy, dude, and it's just and it's sometimes it's sometimes hilarious how clear that auto and script makes them behave. If you come from an angle or even from behind, they suddenly turn to you and shoot at you instantly. Fun indeed. And now another thing that I noticed was that while my FPS was high, it all seemed very sluggish. And I tried with the VSync off and on. With VSync off and mostly all settings on high and ultra, whatever, I got FPS in the hundreds. So I eventually turned it off. In cutscenes, sometimes I got 800 FPS, which made me a little flip out because I don't like my graphic card render 800 FPS for a game. So during the actual gameplay, it was like 180 or something like that. So I tried with VSync off, and then I turned it on to have stable 60 FPS, but it didn't change much. In both instances, there was like a weird latency. So when I moved my gun, or when I moved the mouse, the gun kind of lags behind. So it's really weird. And also, if you when you use your oversized gun sights, which clustered more of the screen than what I'd wished for, and it was very hard to keep the dot on the enemies because at the moment you fired, your gun would switch away. Like it's like a recoil, but it's not the same thing. When you fire at enemies, the your dot will move away, and because of this oversized thing that you have on your screen, you don't see the enemy anymore because it's hidden by the huge, I can't emphasize that enough, that huge sight of your weapon, which hides more than it points at. So yeah, that's really bad. And it really reminds you that this game was made for consoles, even if it was sold on PC, of course. But uh, this this crap with the oversized weapons on the screen and the oversized iron sights and red dot sight or whatever, there was a way for programmers, for developers to hide most of what happens on the screen in favor of higher frame rates. Because if you show off the screen a static object like a weapon or a sight or whatever, that has not to be rendered. It's just a static image, supersized of whatever is behind. So yeah, it was just a cheap way of get higher FPS. But today, especially today, because back then we usually had the old aspect ratio screens. We had 4x3 or 5x4 screens, and rarely anybody had widescreen, let alone anything bigger than 21 inches, and that was big back then. So today, if you play, I play on a 27-inch 60x9, and it just really looks bad if you have the half the screen filled by your weapon or your sight. So anyway, now of course there is recoil and sway, but I don't really recall that being there before, and I don't recall that ever being in a Call of Duty games. Period. I mean, if I play in Call of Duties, usually the one thing that always bothered me was that there was like no recoil and nothing, and you could just pinpoint fire your gun in a direction and it would not move or hardly move or whatever. It just had some spray, I think, but no recoil. Maybe I'm off with that, but I really think that was what it was. The game only has spray but no recoil. Anyway, in the remastered version, it really seems off. It really is hard to stay with your dot on an enemy, and it really is, it's just off. Uh, or maybe they just screwed up the engine for the engine for the remaster. And whatever it cause, it's really nausea inducing. That's actually the thing that bothered me. It feels so wrong that it actually induces nausea. So of the three missions, that's the ship. The second to save Nikolai, and the third is the first American soldier mission. I had to call it quits because that hugely oversized weapon, those hugely oversized weapons on the screen and their sides, and that weird nauseating recoil and bobbing and the minus creatures they call enemy combatants, and more was just too much for me. I might go to install the original again someday just to make a comparison between the two. I might go to install the original again someday just to make a comparison between the two, but I have a feeling that original will win in that one because oh, and apparently there is no anti-cheat of any kind in the remastered version for multiplayer, so good luck with that. I would add normally that I don't suggest anyone to buy this game, but since you have to buy a full-priced other game, this kind of moot point. And it's also, I have to say, it's a weird decision by them as well, because in the last couple months, we had a lot of developers pushing out remastered versions or special anniversary edition, like from Titan Quest. Or then we had the original Sin Divinity, which has an enhanced version. Or then we have just now we had the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. And they were all kind enough to give the game, the remastered version, for free to anyone who owned the game before. Which is the right thing to do. I mean, it's not like they're giving us something new. No, you give us the same thing that we already owned. And it was, nobody asked for this, you just did it. But to try to bump up your sales of a new game by bundling it with the remake of an old game, it's like saying, yeah, we don't have enough confidence in our current game, so yeah, if you buy this one, so we give you the good one with it, but you have to buy the other one, so after we can tell our investors that we sold well, even if it means that most people maybe just bought the game so they can have the remaster. Which again, in hindsight, I will probably regret because it's not worth it. So yeah, anyway, I went a bit over time here. So that's for me. If you want to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, then I highly suggest you play the original one. I think it still looks good enough and it probably runs better, and I'm sure as hell it plays better, and it probably has more people online as well. So yeah, that's all for me, and so it'd be nice now. Good luck with Trump. See you out.